Well, we're going to talk about the JXP origin story
Yeah,
and where did Jesus XP come from, and
yeah,
then we'll talk about a little bit of what is it. But Justin, JXP,
yeah,
um, where did it come from?
yeah. I'll answer that kind of in a twofold way.
Hmm.
It came at a moment when many of us were experiencing the world as we never had before, right? The pandemic
Yeah,
had come upon us,
yeah.
um, and that affected all of our lives, at home, at work, everywhere. And I work with a church, and
Hmm.
so it even affected how church gathered or didn't.
Or didn't gather. Yeah.
And when all of that was taken away, there was this immediate question like, how do we continue to resource one another, to be that one another in community, right? We read that
Hmm.
all over the New Testament.
Hmm.
And and so that's where honestly the gift of this community called the church that we all belong to throughout time and space, I think came up on our radar again. Our brothers and sisters throughout time following the way of Jesus reminded us
Hmm.
to not overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
What if we read the biographies of Jesus together, those biographies, those gospel accounts,
Hmm.
like what Jesus is like, what he says, what he does? What if we read those together slowly?
Hmm.
What if we read them not to master them, but to really let them read us and to invite us in?
Hmm.
What if we do that in a way that makes room for us to name like the parts of our life that's maybe like calling out to heal, to address, to
Hmm.
right, like
As if we're
wrestle?
disciples.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and then one of the things we see throughout Jesus's church is an embodiment.
Hmm.
The mind is beautiful, but there can be a temptation, right, sometime for things to just live in the intellect from the point of view of I want to think thoughts about God or get information about God.
Mm.
But one of the things about JXP that, again, I think the good story we're a part of reminded us is this is a practice. It's Jesus saying, "Follow me, walk with me, practice, live,
Like
do
here and now.
stuff." Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So it was that impulse in a moment of struggle
Yeah. And
that kind of awakened it. Yeah,
when COVID hit, I
yeah,
mean, we're in the Pacific Northwest. This
yeah.
is where, not here on this dock, but this is where Pacific Northwest is where JXP originated from.
Yes, honestly, a small group of friends.
Yeah.
So in what I was saying a moment ago is
Yeah.
in that context, a small group of friends said, "Well, let's try it out."
That's right. Read the gospel slowly,
Yep,
check in with each other,
yep, and
ask
practice the way of
and
Jesus.
practice.
Yeah,
Yeah. And then JXP, a framework for reading the biographies of Jesus,
yeah,
starts like seeping into other communities.
yeah.
I
It
was
just
even
kind of begins to move relationally,
around the country.
which that sounds like something we know, right? Yeah,
Right. Right. So it's moving around the country.
yeah,
And then what did you notice during that time? What did you notice when JXP went out of the Pacific Northwest and you start hearing stories of
yeah.
people are using this framework and they're practicing more?
Well, and we both have heard it. It was interesting to hear people say things that this really simple approach
Hmm.
was like bringing like deep breaths of fresh air to their souls,
Yeah.
giving them a new kind of freedom to
Yeah.
rediscover Jesus again,
Yeah.
giving them handles for transformation.
Yeah.
We all long for it, right? And I almost was surprised by it because
Hmm.
it's too simple, but I'm actually really
Right.
grateful for that.
Right.
Like I actually love it's the genius of God, really, in Christ,
Hmm.
that the follow me, I don't have to hold up the weight of the world. That's what we found friends experiencing.
Yeah.
As they leaned into this, Jesus's words and ways,
Yeah.
it brought upon this life, this quality of life, which again, that was kind of our hope
Yeah.
for ourselves and
Yeah.
for others. It's Jesus saying, "Come to me, all you who are weary," right?
Yeah.
It's he praying to the Father in John 17. Hey, I want them to experience this unity, this togetherness,
Yeah.
this like dwelling together.
Yeah.
It's all that quality of life that Jesus wants for us.
Yeah.
And we saw that happening.
All, like in all different kinds of communities, urban
All kinds of
communities,
communities. Literally
suburban
from the West
communities.
Coast to the East Coast.
Yes, we
Yeah.
saw it happening.
Yeah.
So now people are gathering back in churches again.
Yeah.
The Sunday centric model is starting to rise up, and JXP is now starting to be printed
Yeah.
and distributed.
That's great.
And what's your hope now that people can go and they can gather in large gatherings, small gatherings?
Yeah.
Obviously, the hope is that we don't lose the ways of Jesus. We don't lose
Right.
practicing. But what's your hope if you were to say, my hope for JXP moving
Yeah.
forward would be
Yeah.
what?
I mean, I'll just echo what you said.
Yeah.
I deeply pray that those who would live into it in a church context would find like the next aspect of their life in Christ that
Yeah.
frees them up to, I think, let discipleship go way deeper and to kind of permeate into every part of life and maybe give us a new imagination for how big that is.
Yeah.
I think rightfully so, a lot of us are paying attention to apprenticeship these days.
Yeah.
You know, my dad was we've talked about this, an electrician.
Yeah.
And I remember him telling me stories about apprenticeship. And I hope it invites us into apprenticeship.
Yeah.
Like where Jesus is the one, he's the leader, he's the master electrician, you know, in my dad's kind of story. And he shows us how this works. And then we go live our lives and practice it. But I actually have a hope beyond just the gathered church. You know, I encountered some friends throughout this journey who church had become hard for them, or honestly, it was not even a part of their life. But they would gather with friends around these questions, around this way, around Jesus's invitation into life.
Yeah.
And I remember some of them saying things as we would read the Gospels or lean into the practices. Oh, I can do that.
I can do that.
I want that life.
Yeah.
They didn't know what to do at times with their church experience, but it was awakening something. And if you ask me what I really hope for, I do hope we in the church apprentice well with Jesus.
We apprentice, yeah.
And I hope that we walk with our friends that for whatever reason, church is not on their radar, and it just turns the lights on.